Good morning, everybody, and thank you all for coming. This is Occupy New Pulse, and we are standing here by our First Amendment. On Thursday, February 9th, 4 people were arrested in Hasbrook Park after refusing to leave after Occupy New Pulse was evicted by the New Paltz Village Board. The 4 people, which is me, Margaret Heumann, Brent Stewart, and Michelle Riddell, chose to be arrested because we believed that the things that were being asked of Occupy New Paltz were unreasonable restrictions on our First Amendment rights. For example, we were asked not just to fill out permit paperwork, but to provide $1 million liability insurance, which can be quite costly, sometimes costing as much as $600. We don't believe that financial difficulties should restrict us from being able to exercise our First Amendment. Also, the curfew on the park, curfews have historically, throughout history, been imposed on public spaces for the purpose of restricting people's ability to exercise their First Amendment rights. This occupation tactic is not new. It's been utilized by the labor movement. It's been utilized by veterans and numerous other groups and individuals throughout history to redress grievances to the government. These curfews have been imposed in many places for the intent of restricting people to be able to use these tactics. I would like to also read a statement that Jason West himself had posted on Facebook shortly after the village board had voted to give permission to Occupy New Paltz to remain in the park. Last night, after hearing nothing but supportive statements from the public, the village board voted 5-0 to give them permission to occupy the park they are already in. The board is also unanimous in our opinion that given the First Amendment protections covering the occupation, we do not have the authority to remove the encampment. By any measure, Occupy New Paltz has the community's blessing. Now let's see what they can do. Make us proud, we're behind you. And making our community proud is exactly what we are trying to do and exactly what we continue to do. However, whether or not the local village government decides that our actions or our occupation is effective is irrelevant, considering that you don't have to be good at exercising the First Amendment right to exercise it. So, anybody who would like to speak next? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. This is our attorney, Valeria Georgiou, and she has agreed to help represent us. Right now we are in the works of, we have an arraignment on February 21st at the New Paltz Village Board at 5 p.m. That's this Tuesday, February 21st. We are working with our attorney and considering taking this to trial. And she's here to also answer any questions regarding that. What were you charged with? Trespassing.
Well, I'm the National Lawyers Guild attorney.
Could you speak up?
I'm a member of the National Lawyers Guild attorney, which has been representing Occupy protesters across the country. There are currently, according to the National Lawyers Guild, 11 or more encampments that have current encampments across the country, and also about 20 legal actions as well, various strategies. Here it is my opinion that the denial of applying for a permit when I appeared Thursday. I was called by a protester on Thursday morning, and I appeared at the eviction site Thursday night, and I offered to the mayor, given my appearance now, I can help after counseling the protesters, I can help with the permit application in spite of their lack of due diligence, in spite of not meeting their deadlines. Because I appeared and they were willing to follow my counsel, Jason West at that point had an opportunity to follow the history of the people's, the New Paltz members' interest in the occupation, and instead he chose to proceed with the eviction. I think given the history of this resolution and my appearance on Thursday, it's an unreasonable restriction on the First Amendment rights of the protesters to deny that opportunity. I will continue working with them to make sure their constitutional rights are protected, and I have to clarify as well that occupations are expressive and symbolic conduct protected by First Amendment rights. Even if it's not clear that there's speech or organizing occurring at the site, it is an expression and symbolic conduct that is protected. Not everybody is articulate, not everybody is a professional organizer, so those who can support the movement by camping out should have that right. Not everybody can participate in the occupation in ways we expect. So encampments are symbolic conduct that are protected by the Constitution. So I will raise those arguments in their defense when we get to that point, in the interest of justice. And I'm proud of the protesters for continuing this encampment and these efforts here in New Paltz. We should be proud of them that they are continuing this occupation of representing 99%.
Can you say and spell your
Valeria Georgiou, Georgihiu, Valeria.
Are you considering a suit? You said court.
We're working with Valeria and we're looking at the evidence. Right now, for example, the minutes have not been posted from the last board meeting. That's something we need to look at. We are working with her and we're thinking and talking over. We haven't made any official decisions yet. Again, our arraignment is on February 21st. At that point, we will put in a plea and figure out how we're going to proceed from there. But we are considering taking this to trial.
And is this your temporary encampment now?
This isn't our installation. This is more representative. One, because we do want to have a, part of an occupation is 24/7 visibility, and this isn't quite as effective as our previous encampment. It's what we can have for now while we are working on restoring our First Amendment rights.
What day did you start camping out in the park?
December 11th.
And at most, how many people were there?
At most, first day it was like 70 people. Pretty big.
Are you referring to people
Your
who slept
max,
that
right?
first day?
At the peak, the number of people you had at the most camping.
Camping
Okay.
15.
Okay.
We've had marches and protests where I couldn't put an exact number on it, but it was more than 50 probably.
So what do you intend to accomplish here? This is your property, right?
Yeah.
How
It's
long are you gonna stay
Unframed
out?
Artist Gallery, and we want to stay here until we can go back to our encampment at the park. Okay, we're waiting for that, and this has been relatively effective. People walking by are finding out about it. We're finding more occupiers, and we're doing a replica. These camps have been shut down in horrible ways all across the United States with the military police force. You've all seen this. I look on TV and I'm saying, is this Oakland or is this Tahrir Square? You can't tell the difference sometimes, except that the bullets are rubber. So I was so excited that our town, our village embraced this, and was just incredibly upset when I found out that first they took the First Amendment, our village, and used it, and then when they found that it wasn't to their liking, or maybe a couple of people in the town, in the village, were not happy with it, they just rescinded it. And you can't rescind the First Amendment. The First Amendment does not have a curfew. So this is, as we have the reenactment down the street of this is a reenactment and a real enactment also. I plan to sleep out here when I get a better sleeping bag, when I find my sleeping bag.
Oh, we can get that for you.
Oh, good. Okay. And people keep coming by and asking about it, and so we're keeping it alive in one fashion or another. And as I say, we're standing by our First Amendment literally.
So are you upset with the village board for?
Yes, and also the village board, 3 different people on the village board told me that Occupy doesn't ask permission. When you ask permission, you've lost. And they told me that personally, and so I thought we were in good stead. And even though they had asked us to ask permission, this is what the mayor said to me and 2 other people said to me. And so after that, I was just totally surprised. And they said, should you be surprised? Yeah, we're surprised. You can't revoke our First Amendment.
How would you describe the police handling of the arrests? Were they courteous?
They were more than courteous. They were almost loving. I never saw anything like it. Yeah, the police, the only one that was acting, really angrily was the mayor. Everybody else, the police were wonderful to us. I mean, they said, we might agree with you, but we have to do this. They gave us almost more information than they should have, but they were excellent. Snyder was excellent, Oraxco or something. Another one was really great. And what? Bunts. Yeah. So we had a few of them, and they were very, very cordial with us. And even though Valeria was standing on the trespassing ground, she didn't want to be arrested, and they were excellent. Yeah.
Angrily, how? I mean, what was the demeanor?
He was just really angry that I had yelled at him, he said, at the village board meeting, because of the way that, he badmouthed his first speech. If you can find the live video, is just about how disappointed he was in as if this is his little
And there's some
dream.
pretty blatant hypocrisy there, because civil disobedience is just fine when Jason West is marrying gay couples, which is something that I'm very proud of him for doing, and absolutely
That's why we feel
excited that he was he had the courage to do that. But when the civil disobedience doesn't fit into his personal agenda or perhaps his political career, all of a sudden it's worthy of police intervention. And people like to think of New Paltz as kind of a different kind of town, and I think I haven't been here that long, but I think it is. It's a special place, and 50 years from now, it's going to be pretty obvious that completely unfettered capitalism is horrible for the planet and horrible for the people living on the planet. And New Paltz has a chance to stand on the side of history, on the right side of history, where it should be, and I think where it wants to be. And Jason West has decided to side with those who, use police brutality and repression to stamp out our First Amendment rights.
Who's siding with
Jason West. I mean,
know,
by,
but in what way?
well, by choosing to clear out the encampment with police rather than, let us continue to exercise our First Amendment right. However nice and cordial the police were, he's still using the mechanisms of power to essentially, very nicely, repress the citizenry. So in that way, he stands shoulder to shoulder with Mayor Bloomberg, and I don't know who Mayor Bloomberg is, but those folks who want to use military-style police tactics to prevent us from exercising our rights as U.S. citizens.
What about the other members of the board? You feel they just as culpable?
Well, I feel as though Jason really kind of went out front and took the initiative on it. He likes to pretend as though it's out of his hands, as though by missing a permit deadline, we have forced his move. But honestly, he's the mayor of New Paltz. He has the power and the influence to shape the decision making of this town.
He could waive the permit.
Yeah, he could waive the permit if he so chose. It's ridiculous.
If that's true?
Well, in other jurisdictions across the country, boards and legislatures have passed resolutions supporting occupation. So the resolution, there was a resolution in New Paltz supporting occupation. So I don't
The
know.
village board?
Yeah, from what I understand, I don't know
Is
if
that
there
true?
is another resolution that overturned that initial resolution, and that's something we certainly will investigate. But the mayor and the legislature did have discretion in how to handle this, certainly. And I appeared on Thursday night, and after counseling the protesters, they were willing to submit a permit application, and I offered that to Jason West, stating that in spite of the missing the deadline.
When was the deadline?
The Friday before.
Yeah, please understand, many of these organizers and protesters are volunteers.
Some of them
So
are homeless.
giving them a deadline should consider that time frame. We're not full-time legislators or mayors. Many of them are volunteers.
We're talking about filling out some paperwork.
Yeah. So as far as deadlines, there could be some discretion in granting leniency for deadlines.
Did you have several deadlines imposed on you?
Just one.
Just one?
But the question
the
of
week
the
before.
deadline, yes.
Right.
The
And
question of the
again,
deadline.
I was contacted that day, so I told Mayor West that, I've counseled protesters that are willing to apply with my assistance, and he refused to give another extension or enter into negotiations
It's an
Did he
interesting.
say why?
because they missed the deadline. That was the only
Because he
reason.
can.
He was
'Cause he's
really
the mayor.
It was a
angry.
rigid
Yeah.
response.
Yeah.
It's not just a
What's-
matter of filling out an application. This application wasn't set up for this kind of event at all, and so it was very difficult to figure out how to fill out the application.
How so?
The application's for a one-day event, or like a show or a festival or something like that.
It asks how many people are going to be there. It asks how long it's going to last, etc.
The other matter was, if it was just a matter of filling out paperwork, that would be one thing. But the fact that this comes with a significantly large dollar sign makes it very restricted for us. Because again, a lot of us are of modest means. Some of us are of very little to no means. And
How much were you being asked for? I
well,
understand $1 million liability.
yeah,
but
the $1
you're not-
million liability insurance, that's not through the village. I mean, we can go and seek that out, but when you look at the prices, I mean, some people were looking into it and they saw numbers like $600. Now, the village was also considering.
Do you know how much? I mean, actually.
Well, it's just like anything else. You can look around and there's various places that offer it. But again, these numbers were very restricted. It's not like
And
you
so
can
I
get.
understand you were being asked to take out the insurance.
Well,
or the
part
village?
of the process of filling the paperwork for the park for the use of the park includes a requirement of having liability insurance of $1 million.
This is a video.
So that's part of it, and they refused to waive that part of it. So basically, we would need to get this liability insurance in order to turn in the paperwork, and in order to turn in this paperwork. So again, we were given roughly a week and a half, maybe closer to 2 weeks to get all of this done, and comes up with more than a few weeks to come up with this money. And then in that, we started to kind of realize, look, this is an occupation where we're utilizing our First Amendment rights. We are occupying public space for the purpose of redressing grievances to the government. And as the village board had stated themselves, they believed it was their unanimous opinion that they did not have the authority to remove the encampment because we were protected under the First Amendment. Now, I don't know, they've decided to change their mind, and all of a sudden now they decided that we're not protected under the First Amendment. However, we do disagree. And again, we see this as a financial restriction to our First Amendment. Now, the board was at one time considering another option. For example, having their lawyer draft up a waiver that people sleeping in the park could sign so that the village board would not be liable. We do understand their concern with liability. That's not the issue. However, after speaking with their lawyer, they decided that the best course of action was to make us have this liability insurance and refuse to work anything else out that might be less cost restrictive.
What penalty? What?
Whatever the trespassing charges, I'm imagining that it's a fine. Again, we haven't had too much time to really get into the legal ramifications of all this. We're doing that between now and our arraignment on the 21st.
Yeah, something like this is going on. The court case is going on about Zuccotti on Friday, so that's going to be addressed. And I just wanted to say one thing, that we're here to redress the grievances of the government and deal with the corporatocracy of America, the corporate taking over of the government, and we want to move on with that and not get stuck here, but this is just as important. Tonight there's a meeting about fracking, and we're wanting to do a civil rights-based ordinance to stop fracking. We've been protesting. The banksters are in town right now. We've got Chase in our midst, and Wells Fargo right in our little town.
Have you
So,
considered occupying those areas? I've talked to you about this before.
that's their private property. We'll be arrested, and we might. Maybe you can join us. Okay, Jeremiah. I know.
I'll be happy to cover it for you. Sure.
Okay, well, we might do that as well. But the point is, this is Occupy everywhere. It's thousands of places all over the world. Occupy Tokyo, Occupy Oakland, Occupy everywhere. And so what we want is a global democracy, and that's what we're about. So if it has to start here in standing in front or behind our First Amendment, then we need to do that as well, because it's being rapidly eroded by
The First Amendment doesn't say that we have the right to petition our government for redress of grievances as long as we have the money. And historically, if you look at democratic movements and for example, the labor movement in the 30s, the bonus army that camped out on the White House lawn, because they weren't being paid. They didn't, FDR didn't ask them for a permit. It's a little insulting, actually.
So is the village board part of the government process or problem issue?
Yeah.
Well, now we have to redress this government, and it starts little. It starts from headstrong, arrogant mayors to presidents and dictators.
We would much rather be working with the community, working with the village government to get at the people who are causing the real big problems that are trickling down to our communities.
Exactly.
For example, the federal government who wastes our money overseas, who wastes our money on bailouts for companies that already have billions of dollars, and yet fails to adequately invest in education, which trickles down to cuts to the state, then the state cuts to the county, and then we have local school districts who are struggling to make their budgets. This is how things come from the top down. The real trickle down is the problems, not the money. And that's where we really want to be focusing our efforts, but right now we've been thwarted by having to deal with this issue. But again, we believe fighting for our First Amendment right is extremely important, and we are joined by occupations all over, including in New York City, where they are currently engaged in a similar legal battle right now. So we are all together. We're all part of the same movement, and we want to be as effective as possible. But right now, the actions of our village government have made it more difficult for us to be so.
And
Can you say and spell your name?
Amanda Sissenstein, A-M-A-S-I. Sorry.
Amanda normal spelling.
Amanda Sissenstein, S-I-S-E-N-S-T-E-I-N.
And you were arrested?
I was, along with 3 other people.
yeah, and if the mayor and the village wants to start working with us again, we're really putting our hands out for them to come to their senses and work with us.
And how would they do that?
We could figure out some other way to deal with the liability issue while making it less cost restrictive. And we don't feel filling up paperwork, to work with the village government is necessarily infringing our First Amendment rights. However, the fact that there's a large bill attached to that is restrictive to us. If they wanted to work out something where it was less cost restrictive, or find some way to help us find some ways to somehow find liability insurance that wasn't so cost restrictive, that would be fine. Again, it wasn't just a matter of filling out paperwork. It was a matter of coming up with some significant amount of money, which we don't have. And right now, we have to raise money for legal defense. And again, we are choosing to raise that because that's a battle for the First Amendment, and that's extremely important. But having to come up with, whether it's a yearly basis or whatever, coming up with this other money, just to be there when we feel that it's our right to be there, that's unacceptable.
So you want to come back to Hazard Park?
Yeah.
This is our temporary location.
Isn't it true that originally at Occupy New Paltz you camped out at the Peace Park outside Village Hall?
This was true, but at the recommendation of the mayor, we moved to Hasbrook Park because, as he told us that night, and those who were there can back me up on this, we said, hey, look, there's electricity over there, it's less wet, plug in your cell phones.
So the mayor himself invited you into Hasbrook Park and,
Yeah.
and offered the use of electricity.
He said, why don't you guys go over there? It's less wet, it's bigger, it's more spacious, there's an outlet, it's open for public access.
I didn't even know that.
We don't have that on videotape. We don't have that in the minutes of the village, so all we can say is we as witnesses heard him say this to us. But again, that was when,
And originally you went to the village and asked permission, and they said you don't need our permission.
Well, we set up the encampment. Then at the next village board meeting, we showed up and said, hey, we're here. And I believe what we ended on after saying, this is what we're here for, we said, we love you madly. And that sentiment was echoed right back at us with the state, with the resolution that gave us permission, and then again with Jason's statement on Facebook, saying that the unanimous opinion of the board was that we were protected under the First Amendment, and they did not have the authority to remove us. So now all of a sudden they got a little skittish with liability. it's an understandable issue, but now they got a little skid of liability, so they've decided now we're not under the protection of the First Amendment. I didn't realize that they had that authority to decide what was the First Amendment or not. So.
Yeah, and we're in good standing with the Huguenots who settled this place. They were repressed and had to flee France, and we're going to put up another sign here, but it's about the Huguenots having problems and addressing grievances with their government. So thousands of them were killed, apparently.
Step on his leash. Step on his leash.
Got him, Rob.
Right, we found the dog.
Gotcha. Gotcha, little pooch.
Michelle Riddell, Michelle Riddell.
And this is your property?
Yes, Unframed Artist Gallery.
And then
Max Richmond, MAXRICHMOND.
and you were arrested as well?
I was not arrested at New Paltz. I was arrested in New York City for Occupy Wall Street.
Yeah. Okay. A statute such as the municipal ordinance granting permits
I got it.
for assemblies is permitted to regulate permits. So there can be some reasonable restrictions, but they have to be narrow, definite, and objective. And the way Mayor West and the board handled this may not have been reasonable under the circumstances and the fact that there was a resolution supporting the occupation within the past couple of months. So, the way Mayor West handled this and the revoking the permit suddenly
Michelle,
is a form of
that's my
unreasonable
shot. It's
communication,
running.
and the board ultimately does have discretion to handle this differently.
It seems very much as though the decision to evict Occupy New Paltz from the park had very little to do with the actual democratic process and more to do with Jason West's opinion of us and his consideration of the political expediency of whether or not this was a good idea.
But the other board members are.
As I said before, it appears as though Jason really kind of sets the tone and sets the policy. I haven't spoken to any of the other members. I would really like to.
I can speak to that a little bit. The thing was, at that board meeting, Jason he spoke up first and he gave a long, and most of the other board members had very little to contribute, so what was going on in their minds is hard to say. And to the best of my recollection, although we do need to look at the minutes and examine the video, to the best of my recollection, they didn't actually vote on that. So again, without seeing them actually vote on something, it was hard to gauge what they were thinking. But again, the mayor set the tone. They did not speak out against what the mayor was saying, and we'll have to check minutes once they're posted, and we can view the video to see exactly what was said. But to my recollection, there was very little said by any of the other board members except for Jason.
Nobody's talked to us. They haven't talked to you.
Well, I have spoken with some of the people on the board members, but again, in personal conversations, not something I'm comfortable saying to people in the media because again, one, I have no evidence of what was said, besides it being a personal conversation, and I'm not going to compromise things that were said to me in private that wasn't necessarily an official matter of business. So, but we have very little information about how the other board members are feeling or acting on this, other than the fact that they did not speak out in opposition to what Jason was saying.
And I am a voice of, I'm going to send in a formal complaint of his personal treatment of me, but that was after you left on Friday. He came back and was harassing us. I've got a number of and I issued something with the police department, and it's a minor assault because he laid hands on me, and he did not hurt me at all. But he was screaming and yelling and cursing, and he was really upset that we had gotten him in the news.
So you filed a complaint?
Yeah, with the police department. Yeah, I'm not gonna. If we can talk it over, I'm not going to press any charges. I really want to resolve I want, you know, he was my friend, and friends do not let friends drive drunk, and friends do not let friends assault them. So it was a verbal, and you know, just he kept laying his hand on me. I said, Jason, are you kidding me? He wasn't hitting me. You know, I don't want to blow that, Jeremiah, don't blow it out of proportion. Because you know, he was more like, can I do it? He was more like, what are you doing? Now we're going to all be on, you know, in the newspaper and that kind of thing. Okay, so, but it was totally unprofessional and unexcusable. And, but that's another thing, you know, that's something else. But I really don't want it, you know, like, blown out of proportion. You know, it was just totally. What?
I'll talk.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Are we all good here?
You're real good. Are we dismissed?
Dude,
Do you have anything like to add?
smash the stage.
I think we have the right under the First Amendment to assemble. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to make New Paltz proud or anything else. We can just assemble.
I personally feel
As long as
that
we're peaceable.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm listening. I was going to say that I served this country's military. At one point in time, I took an oath that said I would protect this land from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And you know, that's right here in New Paltz. There's evil entities that are stretching their fingers out right here in this old little community with the banks and corporations, and they've just overrun what little democracy we have left. And so I was going to get arrested to make that statement. That doesn't sound right. So, you know, like I said, I was willing to get arrested and you know, make that stand, that statement, even here in little New Paltz, that, you know, this needs to be taken care of in a reasonable manner. And dealing with the authorities and all that fun stuff isn't really the right way to do it. Human interaction, one-on-one with, you know, an agenda is how you do things like this, not because I said so. So that's what I have.
Hear you.
I'm horrible.
Do you have anything to say? Grass is good.
The grass is good. The mud was good, I think.
But
He's pretty muddy.
Man, she got out of here quick.
I didn't know if you were dressed like that.
Later, dude.
wait. Oh, I've got that art.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
perfect. Just bring it by at any time.
Okay.
Tell him to say thanks and hi. Thank you for coming and doing the snow. I thought it was raining, not snow. I was like, okay, maybe at least pull up and go actually ice on them out. Oh, really?
Man, I thought it was a nice day today.
Nah. It was kind of.
It was. This morning was glorious. The sky was like purple red. It was like
Yeah.